there, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Hey, everyone.
This is where you give us that stack of source material, the reports, videos, notes you've collected, and we just dive right in.
Yeah, our job is basically to unpack it all. We try to pull out the key insights, the really fascinating bits.
Help you cut through the noise, figure out what's actually in there.
Exactly. We're here to help synthesize what you've shared, maybe connect a few dots presented in the sources, and explore why it might be significant.
And for this deep dive, wow, you've sent us some really interesting stuff. Honestly, some quite strange material. It's a real mix of reports, some video analysis observations, all focusing on these decidedly unusual findings from different parts of the world.
Yeah, quite a range.
We're talking like strange individuals seen near presidents, military encounters with things they couldn't identify.
Right.
Even a weird discovery under the ice, way up north.
So yeah, it's definitely a journey into the unidentified based entirely on what you gave us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start? Maybe with the observation that felt, I don't know, the most unusual. This idea of strange-looking people near public figures.
Right. The source material you provided does highlight that. Let's get into it.
So one source details a specific sighting. This was during the inauguration concert for President Trump.
Okay.
The person speaking in the source, they noticed this one guy seated behind Trump, looked like maybe Secret Service, but his look, it just struck the source speaker.
How so?
They described this blank stare, like an eerie sort of half-smile gaze, just fixed on the back of Trump's head.
Unsettling.
Yeah, the source speaker's first thought was just, okay, that's an odd-looking man. But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
After mentioning this observation, the source speaker said they got a ton of messages, quote, a volume of emails and messages.
Wow. About the same guy.
Exactly. People seeing the same photo or video pointing at the exact same person, saying they also thought he looked really unusual or felt uneasy about him.
Okay, so it wasn't just a one-off perception. Other people noticed too.
Right. And this led the source speaker to draw a comparison to another sighting that had apparently caused a stir before.
Ah, the one mentioned near President Obama.
That's the one. At an APAC conference, the source speaker remembers seeing that picture, described the guy, also seemed to be security, as bald and, well, alien-looking.
Alien-looking, okay. That's quite a description.
Yeah, the source material specifically mentions looking at the facial features, the bone structure in that image. The source speaker called the picture creepy.
So what's really interesting here, and the source material points this out, it's how these visual things, maybe things that just look a bit off to people, how they can combine with, subjective feelings and just explode online, create all this discussion and speculation.
Yeah, like the emails the source speaker got.
Exactly. Based on the sources you sent, these were observations noticed by the speaker, but then seemingly backed up by lots of others contacting them. And this led to some pretty wild speculation within the source itself.
Like the question the source posed, are aliens guarding the president?
Right. And the source speaker is very clear on this. They explicitly say they're not saying anything definitive. It's not about making a claim. The point being made in the source was just how striking the visuals were and how strong the reaction was, how much talk it generated.
It really shows how even small things that just look a bit different, can become big mysteries when they involve powerful people.
Absolutely. It highlights how quickly a subjective impression can catch fire and become this widely discussed puzzle.
Okay, so moving on from strange-looking folks.
Right.
Let's get into something more. Kinetic. The source speaker talked about a breaking situation at the time.
Ah, yes, the Iran incident.
Yeah, the source said, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, let's break it down based on the material you provided. So this reportedly happened on January 16th. Seems like 2017, based on the context in the source. Location was Tran Province, Iran, specifically over Tan City. And the core event, quoting the source summary, an orb object in Tan City sky was fired on by air defense military.
An orb object. And the footage described in the source, it showed this thing.
Yeah, apparently quite clearly described as a white reflective orb. And when the video starts, the source says it's just hovering.
Yeah.
Stationary.
Just hanging out over the city. Okay.
But then, according to the source analysis, things changed fast. While they're filming, the object reportedly starts maneuvering.
How so?
The source describes it jetting over to the left and then moving quickly to the right, like sudden rapid moves.
Not like a balloon drifting, then.
Definitely not. The source really emphasizes this non-linear movement from just an orb shape, They suggest it implies intelligent control or some kind of propulsion that's, well, not standard.
Within the military response, the source mentions footage of that too.
Oh, yeah. Anti-aircraft guns, positioned on a rooftop, actively firing at this orb.
Firing at it. Wow.
And the source speaker points out the soldiers in the video.
Yeah.
They're pointing, looking up, and the source described them as looking completely dumbfounded.
So even the military guys seemed baffled by what they were seeing.
That's the impression given in the source analysis, yeah. Their reaction sort of underlined how strange this whole thing was.
Okay, so they're firing. Did they hit it? What does the source say about the intercept attempt?
Well, the source provides a pretty detailed breakdown of the video. You see the anti-aircraft rounds described as hundreds of these other little white specks going up towards the orb.
Okay.
But crucially, the source notes they're consistently seen flying past the object. They miss.
Miss every time.
Apparently. The source describes the rounds exploding in midair, in one large group, but always a couple of 100 feet away from the orb itself.
So nowhere near it.
Right. The source speaker's conclusion from watching this engagement was clear. The rounds were definitely missing the mark. And this leads to a really key point in the source.
What?
That despite actively shooting at it with anti-aircraft guns, the military was not able to hit this thing.
They couldn't take it down.
Seems not. And that failure to intercept, despite trying, is presented as a big part of the mystery in the source material. What was this thing that could evade direct fire?
So the source then tries to figure out what it wasn't.
Exactly. Based on the video evidence presented, they note it seemed too low to be, say, a typical high-altitude U.S. spy drone. The source mentions those fly miles high.
Okay, so probably not one of those.
And it's described as obviously not an aircraft of any kind. No wings visible, didn't look like a chopper.
Fake orb.
Just a simple reflective orb shape, but with these advanced maneuvering capabilities. So according to the source's analysis, common explanations didn't really fit.
And there was a photo mentioned, too. Did that clear things up?
Ah, the photo. Well, according to the source, that just added more confusion.
Oh, great. How?
The photo, supposedly from the same incident, seems to show two objects close together. One is the white orb, but there's also a darker, maybe more reflective object near it.
Two objects, or one object with two parts.
That's the question the source raises. The speaker expresses real uncertainty. Is it one thing with two components? Or is the white bit maybe just an exploding shell caught near a single dark object in the photo? The source speaker stresses that there's no drone that is comprised of two parts like this, which just reinforces how weird the whole visual is, especially comparing the video and the still photo.
So the photo didn't help identify it, just made it stranger.
Pretty much. Adds another layer to the whole puzzle of what the Iranian military was dealing with that day.
Okay, so this whole incident, as laid out in the source, it really does raise a big question, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You know, when a military force uses weapons against something it can't even identify, and it finds it can't hit it, what does that imply about the object's capabilities?
Or maybe about the limits of our own technology.
Exactly. What are the limitations of current defense systems when faced with something exhibiting characteristics like these? It's a major point highlighted by the source material, this potential challenge from UAPs that might just outperform conventional military tech.
Okay, definitely a lot to think about there. Let's shift gears geographically. The sources you sent also mentioned other strange things in the sky, over in the U.S. this time, Colorado.
Ah, right, the triangular formation sighting.
Yeah, one report in the material talked about witnesses seeing a big flying triangle. And apparently this wasn't just the triangle. The source mentioned there were also what looked like regular planes or maybe helicopters flying near it.
Right, that detail was included. And the source material does provide some context here. It notes that formations of lights, often seen as triangles, well, they're certainly nothing new.
These kinds of reports pop up fairly often.
According to the source, yes. The speaker mentioned seeing similar reports many times before, and they specifically brought up the Phoenix lights.
Oh, yeah, 1997. Big event.
Exactly. The source uses that as a major example of these reports of large, silent, structured formations appearing in the sky.
And the big question with these triangles, as the source points out,
is whether you're looking at one large craft or if these are separate crafts altogether.
Right. Is it one massive thing outlined by lights or just several smaller things flying together in formation?
And that ambiguity, the source suggests, is a constant challenge when trying to interpret these kinds of sightings.
Okay, so from triangles in the sky, let's go somewhere completely different. Your sources also highlighted a discovery. Underwater. Near the North Pole.
Yeah, this one's really out there.
Yeah.
Literally.
So what did the source material describe?
It talks about a circular structure found sitting below the surface of a small body of water, like a meltwater pool that opened up in the ice.
Below the surface, and what did it look like?
The description in the source is pretty striking. It's called a perfect disk, having a metallic feel or look to it, and just this very noticeable, perfect circular nature.
Huh. A perfect metallic disk under Arctic water. Any idea how big?
The source gives an estimate. It says it measures around 40 meters across, so not small.
40 meters? That's pretty substantial.
Yeah, and the location is described quite specifically, too, found inside what the source calls a heart-shaped portion of ice that has melted, exposing the water and whatever this is beneath it.
A heart-shaped melt pond, okay.
And the source adds that geographic coordinates for this spot are supposedly available.
Interesting. So what did the source think it could be? Any speculation?
Well, the source discussion touches on a few possibilities. Could it be a base of some sort, maybe something artificial down there?
Like an installation?
Or perhaps something that just landed there momentarily, like a craft parked underwater.
Okay.
The source speaker also considers if it might just be natural, like a weird sheet of ice. But they sound pretty skeptical of that idea. Why skeptical?
Mainly because of that description, the perfect circular nature and the apparent metallic look. The source suggests that's pretty unusual for natural ice. Right, perfect circles aren't usually nature's go-to shape on that scale.
Exactly. And what the source finds particularly interesting is drawing a parallel to the other pole, the South Pole.
Antarctica. What about it?
The source mentions other strange reports linked to Antarctica, things like supposed pyramids or fort-looking structures seen in satellite images or discussed in fringe circles.
Ah, those stories.
Yeah. And the source speaker kind of connects them, suggesting there's a lot of mystery surrounding both of them, meaning both polar regions potentially having these weird, maybe artificial-looking structures in really remote places.
So, a possible pattern of strangeness at the poles.
That seems to be the implication raised in the source, and it's fascinating, isn't it, how the reports you shared aren't just about things flying around. They cover weird observations of people, dynamic aerial stuff the military engages with, and these apparently static, mysterious structures found in places like under polar ice. It really broadens the scope.
Yeah, it shows the phenomena, or whatever these things are, reported in the sources. They seem to show up in all sorts of environments. Sky, land, underwater.
Exactly. All different forms, all different places.
Okay, so let's pull back for a second and recap what we've gone through from the sources you provided.
Good idea.
We started with those really odd observations, the strange individuals seen near presidents, that whole alien bodyguard speculation raised in the source.
Based on those visual descriptions and the public reaction.
Then we jumped to that pretty dramatic account from Iran, the military firing on an orb, an object they couldn't identify and apparently couldn't hit.
Right, the maneuvering orb that evaded anti-aircraft fire.
Then the report of the big flying triangle formation over Colorado, raising that question of one object or many.
A classic type of sighting, but still puzzling.
And finally, this really weird circular structure, supposedly metallic, found under the ice near the North Pole.
Yeah, the underwater disk.
So these are all pretty different reports, aren't they? Coming from different places, different types of encounters.
Definitely disparate, but all drawn from the material you shared with us. And together, as presented and analyzed in those sources, they do raise a lot of questions.
Questions about unidentified objects, unidentified phenomena happening in the sky, near people, even hidden under ice or water.
Yeah, across various domains.
And you provided these sources, which are just full of these observations and accounts that really, they challenge our standard ways of understanding the world, don't they?
They certainly push the boundaries of conventional explanations.
So I guess the big question hanging over all this is, what does it all mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I mean, when you consider the range here,
yeah.
You've got military engagements where our tech seemingly comes up short, and then you've got these potential structures in places like the poles, places we barely explore or monitor closely.
Right. Extremely remote and difficult to access.
What might all these accounts, taken together from the sources, suggest about? Maybe the limits of what we currently know, or our ability to even observe and understand everything that might be out there.
It definitely prompts you to think about those limitations, doesn't it? The sources present phenomena that seem to operate outside our known physics or technological capabilities.
So, thinking about everything we've just discussed from these sources, What stands out most to you? What's the detail or the question that really sticks with you?
It's a good question to ponder.
Well, thank you again for sending in the sources for this deep dive. It's always fascinating to explore this stuff based on what you find interesting.
Absolutely. Please keep them coming. We look forward to seeing what you send us for the next one.